Greetings, Wambuimadeit here. Welcome to Wambuimadeit. Today, one word, potholders. A while back, someone said to me, I just want to make a simple, easy, and quick potholder. How can I do that? And I had to think about that because there must be 100 ways to make potholders. But today, I want to share with you what I believe is the easiest way to make a potholder for me. And we're going to make these potholders right here, okay? And they're really good potholders. They really do hold pots and pans really good. You know what? Let's just get to it. These are the things that we're going to need in order to make our Easy-Peasy Potholder. The first thing is some fabric. We're going to need 3 pieces of fabric. The first piece of fabric that we want to have is we want a piece of fabric that is cut 2.5 inches wide by 7 inches long. So this is eventually going to be the loop for our Easy-Peasy Potholder. And then we want 2 pieces of fabric that are 10 inches by 10 inches. So 2 10-inch square. It can be whatever fabric you want as long as it is 100% cotton. You can piece it together. You can use just one plain piece. You can have the same colors on both sides. You can shake it up. You can shake up all 3 of these fabrics to be different patterns. It's up to you. So, but you do need the 1 2.5 by 7 inch and 2 10 by 10 inch squares, okay? Then we're going to want some batting, all right? So batting is that material that makes a quilt and makes a potholder. So we want some batting, and again, for the potholders, I recommend 100% cotton batting for your potholders as well. So we want a batting piece that is 10 inches by 10 inches. It can be a little larger, but not smaller than 10 inches by 10 inches. And then what we have here is, some people call it Insul-Bright. It is a reflective material. Well, I'll show you the package that mine came in. It is a polytherm fleece. Okay, now on one side of mine is very shiny like this. It looks like a dress that Diana Ross might have worn on the Ed Sullivan show, but this is that material that's going to protect your hand from the heat. So it reflects the heat away, and it will also work well once you have it in your potholder to protect your table or your counter from a very hot pot or a very hot dish. Now, what I want to share now though is this is optional. The reason that I say this is optional is because unless you have a walking foot, or some machines today come with built-in walking feet, some type of mechanism on your machine that's going to help to ensure that your fabric doesn't slide at all and that it all stays together. This can be very slippery and it can be frustrating to work with. It's going to make your layers very thick. And like I say, I have found this to be slippery, at least this particular brand. Maybe there are other brands that are not so slippery. But I'm going to suggest that if you don't have a walking foot or some mechanism that does what this will do, then leave this out and just go with your batting, okay? And you're still going to have a wonderful potholder that works. You just won't have that reflective element in it, okay? The next thing that we want is, of course, we want thread that kind of blends in with your project for your sewing machine. And later on, we're also going to be doing just a little bit of hand stitching at the very end. So needles, and where there are needles like this, I need a needle threader. So that's something else we want to have handy. We want some straight pins. We want something to mark with. This again is optional, but I have found that it works very well, and I always mark my potholders now, especially when I'm using thick layers. So something to mark your fabric with, a marking pen or marking chalk. Where we're going to be marking is going to be on the inside. It won't be something that's going to show at the end. So just a good marker for that. And of course I have right here a seam ripper. I'm hoping that we don't need a seam ripper, but it's always good to have one handy in case you go a little crooked, you sew something you didn't mean to sew. A seam ripper can be your best friend. And then of course we're going to need some scissors, some little clippers, and also when we get ready to trim up our edges, a ruler is going to be real handy. We want some type of ruler or measuring device and or a rotary cutter. What we're going to be doing with the trim up can be done with scissors. It's just going to be a lot cleaner and a lot faster if you do have a rotary cutter, but I'll show you how to do it both ways. And so those are the things that we need. Oh, and of course you want to have your iron on standby, and you want to have an ironing board or some type of ironing surface, okay? The first thing that we want to get is we want to get this little piece of fabric right here. And we're going to put everything else away right now, and we're going to deal with this piece of fabric. We want this fabric, and we want our ironing mat, and we want to heat up our iron. Now, what we're going to do with this piece, which is, like I said, eventually going to be our loop for our pot holder, is we are going to fold it in half and keep the edges as even as possible here. All right. And then we are going to press this down and make that crease in here like this, okay? And then once we've pressed the crease in that way, what we're going to do is open it up. And now we're going to take one side, we're going to take this side and we're going to butt it right up into that crease. So we're going to have another fold, and this end is going to meet right where that crease was. And then we're going to press that side down. And now we're going to do the exact same thing on the other side. Just turn it around, take this edge in and butt it right up against that seam. This one is not so even. Okay. All right, so we're going to have both of these sides meeting right in that crease that we created the first time, and we're going to press that. Okay, and now the last thing we're going to do over here is we're going to fold this and make sure the ends are even. Okay, and the ends are even and straight. Okay. All right. Okay. Now that we have this, what we're going to do is we're going to go to the sewing machine and we're going to sew a seam so that it hugs on this edge right here. And then we're going to sew a seam so that it hugs this edge right here. And it's up to you. I also like to do a seam down the middle. That's optional, but I like to do one more stitch just down the middle once I've done the two side stitches. Okay, so we're going to go to the sewing machine and we're going to do that. So we're just going to keep it right on the edge. And we're just going to sew right off. No need to tack back because these ends are going to be held together by another means. We're going to disengage And now we're going to do the exact same thing, a seam going down this side over here. And okay, so come down here. And right off. Okay, and I like to do one. If you want to stop right there, you can with the 2 seams. I'm going to go ahead and put a 3rd seam. Just to me, it's just a little more decorative. So I'm going to go ahead and do a seam right in the middle of the seams that we just did. Okay, and so we have our loop. Okay, now all we need is the rest of the pot holder. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to make our pot holder sandwich. And the way we're going to make our pot holder sandwich is we're going to start with the reflective material and we're going to turn it face down. So we're going to put that face down and then we're going to get our batting. And of course, if you're only using the batting, then you would put your batting first. Okay, so we have the reflective material and the batting. All right, now on top of the batting, we're going to put one of the fabrics and we're going to put it face up. We want the good side facing up. All right, so we want the good side, wrong side down, wrong side down. We want the pretty side up. And then we are going to take our second fabric and we want the pretty side facing this side right here. So we want this facing in. So the 2 outsides or pretty sides of the fabric are facing each other on top of the reflective material and the batting, and then we have these 2 facing each other with the good sides in. All right, and what we want to do is make sure that the fabric at least is just matched up as well as we can. We want all the corners to be in the same, to match up. Okay, and then we're gonna, all right, so here's our sandwich. All right, so next thing we're going to do is we're going to take this sandwich part down here. We're going to fold that back and we're going to get our loop and we're going to cross it over just a little bit like that, okay? Not too much. And we're going to put it, we're going to attach it to our pot holder. Now we're not going to attach it like that. We're going to fold it and put it inside. We want it inside this sandwich. So the loop is going to go inside the sandwich. So you're going to eyeball the middle and we're going to pin this in place through all layers. Okay, so we're going to just pin that like that. And then we're going to take this sandwich and we're going to cover that up. All right, match up your corners. In fact, why don't we go ahead and put a pin over here for the corners before we stabilize our loop. We're going to go ahead over here. We're going to match up the corners. All right, now what we're going to do is we're going to go in there and we're going to slide this pin out, but keeping the loop in place, and then we're going to cover it up just like that. And now we're going to put the pin back through all the layers, making sure that we catch. And you know what? We want the loop, let's let it stick out a little bit. That way we can make sure that when we sew, we're catching, that is caught in there good. All right, so now we're going to put a pin in there. All right, so we have something that looks like that now. Now, before we forget, we have a no-sew, a no-sew zone on this potholder, and that is going to be at the bottom. It's going to be 3.5 to 4 inches down here. So we're going to eyeball that. Now that's one of the things that we can use our markers for. In the beginning, we're going to say, okay, I'm going to mark right here, and I'm going to mark right here. Now between those two marks is a no-sew zone. So we're not going to sew there. We can even like give it a little box. Say, okay, we're not sewing right here. Now what we're going to do though is we're going to take some pins and we're going to match our, at least the fabric really well. Make sure that those corners match up good. And you're just going to put some pins in the corners and a few pins throughout to make sure that everything stays in place when we do go to the machine to sew. All right, so we're going to put a few pins around the edge here just to hold it in. All right, now the next thing we're going to do, this is the part that I will say is optional, but I really find it very helpful. And that is, we're going to sew a 5/8 inch around here, except for the no-sew zone. And we want 5/8 inch. We want to pivot when we get to those corners, and we're going to do a 5/8 inch. What I find very helpful is just go ahead and make me a line or do some markings here to help me keep my line straight. There are two ways you can do this. You can take your ruler. It can even be a measuring tape. Find 3/8 on it. And what you want to do is line it up with the edge of the fabric, and then you can just do markings across like this at 5/8, and then you can go back and connect the lines. Or you can just take the ruler, find 5/8 on the ruler here, and line it up with the edge of the fabric. And then we're just going to do a line like that. And just go from one end, all the way from one end to the other, because, okay, so 5/8. From one end to the other, because what we want is we want that cross right there. We want to have that because that's going to let us know exactly where we need to stop our needle to pivot to go the other way. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to finish marking this at 5/8 inches from the edge of the fabric. And we know exactly where we're not going to sew, and we can see the lines we want to be on, and we actually have a point to help us know when we want to pivot, because here we're going to leave the needle down and pivot. I'm going to show you that now. So we're going to go to the sewing machine. So we are going to start right here at the no sew zone line, right on that 5/8 inch mark. It is important to back tack, so go forward and then go backwards and then just go straight on that line. See how much easier it is when you can just see the line. And what we're going to do is we're going to go into where these lines intersect, and that is going to be where we're going to stop. Okay, one more. All right, I'm going to lift the presser foot, but leave the needle in. I'm going to twirl, and now I'm ready to come back down this line that's over here. We're going to come straight down this line. Okay, and when we get to that corner, we're going to slow down, and we're going to go right into where that cross is, right in the center. And lift, twirl, and now we're ready to come right back down this line right here. Okay, now we're getting to where our loop is. So what we're going to do is we're going to come across our loop, and then we want to go backwards across the loop. And now we're going to continue on the line. Into that corner. And ready to come down this line. And we're going to stop this. We're back at our no-sew zone. So we're going to stop as we get up to the no-sew line. We're going to hit it, and then we're going to go backwards and then come forward. And now let's go see what we have. The next thing we want to do is trim our edges. We want to trim them down to like 1/4 of an inch. You can eyeball it and use scissors if you'd like to. So just go very carefully and just go 1/4 inch away from the seam, and you can trim it up with scissors like this, okay? Or you can take a quilting ruler or some type of ruler that will allow you to see where 1/4 inch is. You're going to line it up with a seam on each side, and then you're going to take your rotary cutter and you're just going to clean it up like that. Okay, and so we're going to do this all around, whether you're using the scissors or a ruler to help you cut it back to where it is about 1/4 of an inch from each seam. Once we trimmed it up, the next thing we want to do is get our scissors, and we're just going to snip these little triangles off the corners, being very careful not to snip the stitches or the seam. Just above, we're going to snip off that little triangle. We're going to do this for all of the 4 triangles. Not snipping careful not to snip the seam or any stitches, and snip off the triangles. Okay, and all right. Now that we have the corners snipped, it's ready for the big reveal. What you want to do is go between the 2 fabrics. Okay, you want to go between the fabrics. You want to put your fingers in or whatever you can get in there, because what we want to do is turn this whole thing inside out. So we want to go in there and very carefully just go ahead and turn inside out. And gently okay. All right. Now, just as you start to see that it's all the way turned, then you want to start finding the corners. You want to find a corner, and when you find a corner, you're going to take your finger and you're going to punch out the corner, because we want our corners to be corners. Okay, so as we are turning it now, we want to find the corners. Find all 4 corners, put your finger in there, push the corner out, really push the corner out so that the corner is a corner. And now, get these corners on the bottom here. Push, push, push the corners out, and there we go. Push the corner out, And this one needs a little more help over here. I do have instruments that help to do this. Right now, let's see if our fingers can't do it. Okay. All right. Wow, look at that. Whoa, and this is our Easy-Peasy Potholder. And look at the loop, doesn't it look cute? Okay, I have switched out to a dummy potholder because I wanted to use this light muslin and a darker color thread so that you can really see the stitches that I'm doing for anyone who may need to see the stitches, okay? So I have in here thread. This would be the thread that you used in your sewing machine to sew your potholder. And I have the thread doubled and I have a knot in it. The thread should be at least twice the length of the opening that you want to sew up. Okay, we're going to go to that end, to that no sew zone, and we're going to match up the ends here. So we're basically going to be doing that, right? Just matching them up. Now, the first thing you want to do is take your needle and you're going to go inside the opening. It may be a little different whether you're right or left-handed. I'm right-handed. I'm going to go inside here and I'm going to bring the needle up just right here, about 1/4 inch. So the opening is here, so I'm going to go past about 1/4 inch and bring my needle up. So it's going to look like this inside, and I'm going to bring it up between the seams, okay, like that. All right, so now what that also does is it's going to allow me to hide that knot. All right. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it around because for me, I want to go back this way where the other opening is. And for me as a right-handed person, or at least for me, it's just easier to travel this way. So now that I have that thread in there, what I'm going to do is I'm always going to be going back into, let me see if I can hide that. I'm always going to be going back into where I came out of. I may not hit it precisely, but I want to get as close to where I came out of to go back in. So I'm going to go back in right here, and then I'm going to travel. And by that, I mean I'm going to be moving in the direction I want to go to close this little space. So I'm moving this way, I'm traveling this way. But as I travel, I don't want any needle or stitches to show either on the back or the front. Everything when we travel is going to happen between the layers in here. So I'm going to go back in where I came out, and I'm going to travel down about 1/4 inch. Now when I get down here, my needle is here between this fold over here. I'm going to bring it out, and as I bring it out, I'm going to catch just the tip of the fold over here. And so we're catching that little tip like that, and then I'm going to bring this up and through. Okay, and so but there's no stitch on the outside. All right, we're going to go back in where I came out, which is right here, or as close to it as I possibly can. I came out here, I'm going in here. I'm putting my needle inside. Let me get this little string is just bothering me. Okay, I'm going to go back in where I came out, and I'm going to go into the back in that fold, and I'm going to travel along. Okay, no needle, no string on the back, no needle on the back. I just travel. I know I'm traveling through that fold. Okay, I'm traveling through the fold. When I get about 1/4 inch, I'm going to come out and I'm going to grab just the tip of the fold that is on the front. All right, and so we're going to take that, push that through. Okay, I'm going to go in where I came out and go into the back, into that fold, and I'm going to travel. I can feel my needle back here. I'm traveling about 1/4 inch right here. My needle's in there. And now I'm going to bring my needle out from the that back fold into the edge of the front fold. And so we're going to have something that looks like that. Okay, so now we can barely see any stitches at all. We're going to keep doing that. Always go in where you came out, and you're not going to go all the way through. So you don't want to do this. You want to push it in and feel so that you're not going through. You're in that fold right there. Okay, so we're in the fold. We're going to travel about 1/4 of an inch, come out and pick up just the very edge of this fabric over here in the fold on this side. Okay, and we have grabbed that, and now we pull that through. And now always back in where we came out. Travel through that fold on the back, come out of the back and pick up just a little piece of the fold on this side. Okay, so we have basically closed up the hole now, and now all we're going to do is go in here, and we're going to come back out between those seams, between the two seams. Okay. All right, and now we're just going to tack it around itself, very at the place where we came out. Just go back in as close to it as possible, and we are so done. We're going to clip that. You can give it a good press if you'd like, but here is your Easy-Peasy Potholder, and we are done. The end.